born in England. My parents survived World War II, and I have maybe foggy memory photographs of England. I was about 4 when I came over to Canada first, and then my dad got a job in Phoenix, Arizona. So we moved down to Phoenix for 6 months. He couldn't handle the heat, so I was basically raised in California. I gleaned a lot of this from talking to my mom as I got older, but apparently I was born with a cord wrapped around my neck as she was midwife, not at a hospital. It was very intense. My dad couldn't handle me crying, so she confessed to the fact that she had put some rum in my milk and kept me pretty sedated. I was always told I was never amount to anything, that I was stupid, unlovable. Some of the deepest scars were I should have killed you at birth. My dad was a rager. He was always an angry person. You know, Vietnam was happening, so I'd have napalm and yeah, I was very, I didn't even know I was political at the time, but I was very rebellious at the situation I was growing up in. And, you know, we had underground comics, so I would go to the swap meet and buy these underground comics, and I like drawing all the dopers. You know, as I've gone through this healing process, I've been able to just glean the good parts of my life. I was able to forgive my mom and my dad. You know, I ran away from home when I was 10 years old with me and a guy named Mark Sandoval, and we got picked up by the cops, and we were sitting in the jail, and they called our parents, of course, and his parents came down and, you know, grabbed him by the hand and stormed out. My parents came down and said, keep him.
Wow.
So here I was in juvenile hall, and but it was a process I needed to go through. I no longer was I a quiet, timid, taking it kid anymore. I learned that I could really talk well with my fists. So eventually I ended up in a fire camp, and I was doing really well there. The counselors seemed to be really encouraging. And
Did you say a fire camp?
yeah, it was like a boys' ranch.
Okay.
And we cut fire lines at fire camp. And I think there was some biblical stuff going on there. It was run by the county, but it was like a private guy who was running it. I went hitchhiking around the United States for a couple of years and just doing odd jobs and seeing America and seeing people and things like that. I kind of liked it because I could be whoever I wanted to be when they picked me up, you know.
Sure.
And I had a lot of adventures that way. And so I did that, and I really settled into, this was before all the tattoos and everything. And I found myself in a situation where I could infiltrate what they would call the elite in Hollywood, and basically became a whore. let's be honest about it. And those people were so plastic, and there was an undercurrent of evil there, and I got involved in the occult, and so I had opened more doors.
Undercover evil. Explain that to me a little bit.
They're exposing it now, but they used to take runaway children and recruit them,
Sex trafficking.
yeah, and string them out on drugs and pass them around and abuse. There's only 2 things really that I didn't do. I never hurt a child, and I never had sex with animals. Okay, this is like, no, I didn't do
That's
these.
good to know.
Yeah, this is good to know, right? So, yeah, there was certain situations under certain drugs and conditions where life was an orgy. I saw these rich elitists as something I could just basically take off of whatever find their vulnerability and just take it, whether it be money, clothes, whatever, cars. And but somehow that bothered me that I was even doing that. And because of that underlying childhood scar mantra, you're no good, you never amount to anything, you're unlovable.
Did you fit down deep know that you had this moral side that wasn't fitting quite well in that lifestyle?
Yeah, I knew I was evil, but then there was a worse evil than me. There was just,
Right.
it's a strange dichotomy. And I didn't really understand this until I had come out of the darkness and it was revealed to me why I had this experience. And so I went back out on the streets and was living in between two freeways. There was a huge, I don't know, 2-acre forest little thing back there.
How did you eat?
I was a functional alcoholic. I would unload trucks. I worked with day labor. I'd find a generous girlfriend. I always made sure that I squirreled some money away. I was street smart, and I chose to be there because of the ties and the misery. I saw people trying to make a living. I decided that living was more important than making one. Most of the women that got involved with me, and I'm sorry I hurt you, but I'm so grateful I had my experience and you're all still alive in me. They kind of knew what they were getting into. They liked the bad boy and see if we can't tame this guy down. And I think I really did love these women when I was in that relationship. But when it got too good, when it was getting too real, that tape would kick in, you don't deserve this, and I'd blow it up. I'd blow it up in the most cruelest way. And
Purposely or just subconsciously?
both, maybe. Both, maybe. And, I was always one of these guys that had a back door in a relationship. Like, I knew it wasn't going to work out, so hey, how you doing?
You were planning your exit.
Yeah,
while you were
yeah.
with this
So,
current.
and whether I did this knowingly or unknowingly, it was just part of my pattern for so long. And so in that street experience, I had an incident that just absolutely murdered me more, if that was possible. I was sitting at the park, and two of Buena Park's finest, and if you guys are still alive, I forgive you. I mean, it took that to get me where I'm sitting today, so I needed to have that experience. And they asked me to show me your ID, so I showed them the ID, and I showed the ID, and he says, "Well, there's no such place." And I go, "Well, yes, Pepa Bath lives there. I can take you to the house." And they said, "Oh, you're coming with us, all right." And they started wailing on me. And, I don't know if anybody's ever experienced it, but if you have nightsticks put underneath your armpit and you're lifted your body weight on there, that does things. So, of course, I went crazy. Anyways, they handcuffed me and took me into the station, and I became the thing. This is how you train this is how you hurt people. This is how you beat on them without leaving marks. And they took that nightstick and they were shoving it up my. I'm glad I had Levi's on, but it still hurt.
Wow.
And I was just enraged. It was just blah.
These are the days before body cams.
And tasers and all the other stuff. Yeah,
Right.
This is probably early '80s and late '80s maybe. And so, anyways, they beat the Rodney King out of me, and they let me go the next morning. I was just drunk and disorderly, but I remember walking down the street just crying and just filled with rage. So I called one of my girlfriends, Lisa. Lisa will remember this.
Now we'll get back to Lisa, but At this point, was there a place that you called home?
I hadn't found it yet, other than my,
So you were still living on the streets at this point?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. When I did have a relationship, I was in the comfort of a home,
Okay.
you know, but
Okay.
then, you know, I would always go back to the streets.
Back to Lisa.
Yeah, Lisa. So I called her up and she picked me up, and she was a sweetheart. She was studying to be a nurse, and I had just gotten out of a jail experience. So I told her what happened, and her parents decided to have a huge party at the house that day.
Right.
And so consequently, she kept me in her room until I decided that I was drunk enough to go out there. And then I just started consuming, and something happened. And the next thing you know, it was taking every guy at that party to hold me down and take me outside. And this became a pattern after a while. And then I was just living on the streets, shuffling between day labor and drinking and whoring. And it finally brought me, and I had fathered children, you know, and I was just such a bad person that I was no way fit to be whatever. And maybe I'm not sure what it was. It wasn't my destiny to do that. One gal, she had an abortion, so that probably set it up for, like, what's the point of caring about anything? You know, I had been with women that were carrying other guys' baby, and they went and had abortions, and I still not sure how I feel about that. You know, all I know is you know, sometimes you do more damage by bringing kids into this world. And I've been questioned on that. How do you feel about abortions? And I go, well, considering how you treat the kids that you bring into this world, dude, you know, now
That's an interesting
now
take on it.
you can't even love the kids you bring into the world.
Right.
So, you know, I come from that background. You know, I hate crying babies because I know the different tones in crying.
Right.
You know, and I've had them screams in my head for a long time, and it took some healing. So I finally I fathered my son in Montana.
How many children do you have right now?
2 that want to own me.
I understand. I understand.
They kind of like me. I was so blessed by that, you know, and I have 2 kids that are just the light of my life, really, you know, considering the gene pool from where I came from, and their mothers, you know, they turned out really well. And so there came a point where I ended up over here in Prescott. And Prescott was the town where I was going by JD at the time. This is where JD met Dean, this guy.
Interesting.
And I had rolled into town, and I had all my artwork in a portfolio, and it was the 4th of July, bikes all over the place. You could drink on the square back then. Whole band. It was probably in the 1990s, early 90s, maybe.
Okay.
And yeah, me and Time are kind of doing this weird thing lately. And I fell in love with the town. I mean, the women were just like, hey, nice. And I was still trying to, you know, fix things between my son and his mother. But some of the damage had been done to me, and she doesn't even know what I'd really gone through. But I was very cautious of her, and so I fell in love with a bartender. She was the prettiest thing, and she was nice, and so I fell in love with her, and I committed to marrying her. This was my like first marriage, and we drank and we made love and we fought and we drank and we made love and fought and drank and made love. Anyways,
Vicious cycle.
yeah. Anyway, she got pregnant, and I got into a barroom fight, and I got off work. Me and my crew, we went out drinking. Something happened. They all told me what happened the next time we sat down together. But apparently, I got in a fight with the whole work crew. They all had shiners, and the cops were called. And in the middle of the fight, I felt his hand on me, and by the time he was spinning me around, I was bam, and down he went. And it wouldn't have mattered. It could have been Jesus standing behind me. The same thing would have happened. But it was a cop.
That was a cop.
It was a cop.
Oh boy.
And the next thing you know, they were all on me. And the more that came on me, the more berserk I got. And it took every cop on that night shift to get me in the back of the car. And apparently they decided to write down everything I said because my arrest report read like a Stephen King nightmare. And it took every jailer to get me into the room.
Yeah.
And
took a while to read that one.
and you know, they had put a towel over the window. I was in there. I woke up the next morning, and of course I was bruised and hurt. And I'm pounding on the door. Hey, what did I do? What did I? And they wouldn't talk to me. So the cop came in. He was not a pleasant person, and he goes, "You have no idea what you did." I said, "No." And he says, there's a police officer in the hospital, and he's in a coma."
Oh no.
And I'm going, "Oh shit." So I think the charges were aggravated assault on a police officer, resisting arrest, mayhem and chaos, and all the rest of the main charges were like some serious stuff. And so I was sitting in jail, and because I was married and because I had a job, I don't know if I had it yet, but my dad decided, he had met my wife and come out, and he saw that I was trying to do something with my life. So he decided to pay the bail, and Dean, JD, decided he was going to go right back down to the bar where the thing started. And it's 10 o'clock in the morning, and I'm sitting on that bar stool, double shot of JD, and my namesake, and juvenile delinquent James Dean and Jack Daniels, all in the same beaker.
Right.
So yeah, I'm sitting there, and there's a big mirror across. I heard the birdcage burn down, but there used to be a big long mirror, and somebody had scratched off some paint off of one of the darkened windows, and that sunlight came in and hit that Jack Daniels, and it reflected. And I looked up in the mirror, and for the first time, you know, they call it a moment of clarity, but I said, "Man, there's something wrong with you." So I left the drink, and I went up to the guidance clinic, and I'm sitting in the chair. I need to talk to somebody. My world's going crazy. And I met this lady. Her name was Janet, and she was like my counselor. But I went in there and I spilled my guts. I mean, the horror of it and everything, you know. Probably a little overkill. And she goes, "Well, I really can't help you, but there's a group of people down on the backside of Main Street. I knew where the building was. They'll be able to help you." So I went down there, and that's when I first walked into sober, an AA meeting. And it was all new, and everybody seemed to be glad I was there and everything. And you know, here I was looking at prison, serious prison time, based on all my record and everything. This was not going to be some slap on the wrist shit.
Now this was the day after the event?
No, this had probably been about a couple of weeks, you know,
Okay.
because I did do a couple of weeks in jail until a
Okay.
bail. Um, I had got my old job back, amazingly, and my crew had forgiven me, amazingly. But my wife was not real pleased with the whole thing. So I started doing the AA thing. I got me a sponsor. I started listening to what they were doing. It seemed like this was something I could chew on, and maybe they could figure out what was making me tick. It was suggested I go in a treatment center, so I ended up hooking up with this guy, and he gave me right up to the treatment center in Flagstaff, and my first time ever in that environment. So my first group, I'm sitting there, you know, and they go, "So how do you feel?" How I feel? I feel good, man. I'm really good. I'm glad to be here. Blah blah blah. How can you feel good? You've done this and this and this and this, and I'm sitting there. I guess, well, shit. I guess I don't feel so good now. They started asking questions. Well, how did it feel when your parents told you that you were a piece of shit? How did they? And for some reason, I don't know whether it's because I didn't have any alcohol in me or it was just that perfect time. But them guys made me cry. Okay, and I would walk out of the group and I'd go have a cigarette out back, going, "What the hell, man? I don't like this shit." And I'd go back into the group the next time, and they'd start picking on me, and I'm kind of getting pissed off about it. Yeah, that experience,
You said there was a Bible track in the phone booth.
absolutely. And I stuck it in my back pocket, went home, and I drank the beer, woke up the next morning, and I felt so empty, so nothing but despair. And there was a big storm happening. I mean, kaboom! And you could smell it. That's how close the lightning was.
Wow,
You
that's
know,
hitting close to home, isn't it?
yeah, Prescott Valley, it'll do that.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, I'm sitting there and I'm going rummaging through my pocket, see how much money I got, and I pull out this Bible tract, and it was pretty beefy, but I got to the part where Jesus died for our sins, and if we confess, He'll forgive us, and we can be born again. And I go, born again. I said, "Oh, Jesus, man, you got to." You got to be real in my life because nothing else is. And the storm became muffled. And I heard a voice say, "I loved you, I died for you, learn of me." And it was like, I dealt with a supernatural and I dealt with evil, but this was supernaturally good. I mean,
I've got the chills.
yeah, it was amazing. So I go running into my mom's house. Mom, you got a Bible? And she goes, "Yeah, down there on the lower bookshelf." And I got it out and I took it out to the tent, and it was a Reader's Digest Bible. And I said, "Now what?" And I heard Job. I open it up and I see this. It looked like Job to me, you know.
Did you know anything about the Bible at this point?
Other than it had some nice sayings in it. Rolled cigarettes if you didn't have regular rolling papers. Yeah, it was a control issue for many millions of people. I mean, when you're involved in Satanism, man, you just kind of, yeah. So I'm reading the first 2 chapters of Job, and I go, God, Satan. Now I knew who Satan was, but what's this deal here? So I read it, and I don't know whether it was the way it was written, but I understood it, what I was reading for the first time. And that was kind of like it for a while. I basically went back to doing the other things. And I had to experience, I walked on a field of grace that no words can describe, but I had to confront my demon. And that happened after I made a commitment to my now wife, Linda, and moved to Cottonwood. And because I hadn't beat up cops here, I hadn't made any enemies. I was still, kind of respected artist type guy.
Now you're unknown.
Yeah, and
Could
the
be
only
a
one,
good thing, huh?
and she'll testify to this experience. And so I came over to Cottonwood. And I was still heavy metal, tattoo artist, still drinking, controlled drinking. At least that was the illusion I was under. And I had went out with a friend of mine, Johnny, and his girlfriend. We went out drinking, and we were power drinking. And I came home, and Linda wouldn't let me in the house, and I'm huffing puffing. I'll blow the door down, and there was a cop sitting right outside the front of the house, and he gets out of the car, and he's a short little guy, and I'm all, and I told the cop, and I said, look, it'd probably be a real good idea if you handcuffed me. And he kind of stepped back, and he goes, oh, okay. So he handcuffed me, and he took me to jail. And this was not domestic violence. It was something not quite as serious as that. I woke up the next morning, and that dreaded feeling, that yuck,
In jail.
had come over me again. And what's the point of living? You might as well kill yourself. Why don't you just bash your head in the corner? Because I was in one of these little tiny cells with a corner and a sink. And so I grabbed my back of my head, and I'm mustering up every ounce of strength I got, and I'm going to bash my brains in. And I was almost ready to do it. And then that voice that got me in the tent, it said, now do you understand? I went, whoa. Linda, we weren't supposed to be together, so Linda was, she said she was going over to mom's house in Prescott Valley. Okay. And I had the house to myself. A friend of ours came and picked me up from jail and brought me home. And the voice had been guiding me that morning. And he said, go down the river. So I went down the river. And get in the water. And I was baptized.
Yourself.
Not myself. Not myself. Anyways,
Who was at the river with you?
apparently Jesus took time off of his busy schedule to make sure this was happening.
Wow.
And I came up out of the water, and that evil, that pain, everything was just gone. And I was privileged, I suppose is the word, to see into the spirit realm. I saw what I would best describe as angelic beings. And in the background, there was all these little black, squirrely looking creatures. Let's call them that. And I came up out of the water, and I was dripping wet. And the vision faded after a while, and I started walking back up to the house. And I go, now what? And the Lord spoke to me. He says, go over to Frankie's house and get that Bible he's got. Because we had been toying with the Bible. I had looked at it a few times when I was over at his house. He was dealing drugs at the time and stuff, but I associated with that kind of people. Anyways, I went over there and I said, "Hey, Frankie, can I borrow your Bible?" He said, "Sure." So I took it back home, and I never realized what I had until I had gotten into it. But it was a King James Thompson chain reference Bible.
Right.
And I'm in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So I'm already in the supernatural. That's a supernatural book. So I'm hanging out with the author of the book, and he's teaching me, showing me. And as dumb and as stupid as I was, I studied that thing like a cop at a crime scene. But I went to a lot of churches, and God bless them, they all got their little thing, I suppose. But I kept bumping into all this maybe misinterpreted teachings, I guess. One church, you couldn't be spirit-filled until you spoke in tongues. And that kind of threw me for a loop. And I was confronted on it. Do you speak in tongues? And I said, well, I love Jesus and he's my Lord and Savior. And for a redeemed Satanist, that's a new tongue to me, And because I wore leather and boots and all this stuff.
That's very interesting.
They stereotyped me as a biker. I'd never been on a motorcycle in my life. I spent too much of my time drinking. Anyways, I had my church experiences and stuff, and I kept bumping up to all kinds of doctrines and end times. And that was interesting. The Lord was showing me the end times. And because of my experience in the occult, and I didn't need faith to believe in Satan and his tactics, I knew that he had one enemy, and that was Jesus Christ and anybody who represented him. Apparently, because of my past and my birth and the stuff I experienced, I find myself able to relate to almost every human being on the planet.
Sure.
Even combat veterans, because I had different kinds of combat. I mean, I took people out of here you wouldn't like, but different kinds of warfare. I was under like a spiritual warfare, and I didn't understand it all, and it was a gradual revelation. So now I've been walking with the Lord for 33 years. My wife actually kind of did the math on that. So I came into the church, and I was more like John the Baptist. Hey, we're in trouble. We got the Illuminati, UFOs, we got the Bilderbergers, we got this conspiracy, and they all thought I was nuts. I had made a commitment because we had so many people fellowshipping in the house. Somebody made a remark that me and Linda were living in sin because we weren't married, and I said, well, that's not true. We're getting married next Saturday.
There you go.
And awesome.
So was that the proposal, Dean?
Yeah, we're getting married. Once you realized that I was really doing the Jesus thing and I had changed, and she made, okay, we're getting married.
And that's been how many years ago?
God, man, she says 30 years, but I've known her longer than that, I suppose.
She says 30 years and you just believe it.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah. Time, here's this time thing,
Do what you're told.
Yeah. How do you survive 33 in marriage? I'm always wrong and I'm always sorry.
Yes, dear.
Yes, dear. You're right. And blessed are the peacemakers, and the man's enemies will be in his own household. I had basically been given an unction that there was going to be a major attack on a world trading center. It was worded that way. No date, no nothing, but there was going to be an attack on a world trading center.
You had this vision?
Yeah, and I shared it. And so on the day of the event, I had my buddy Ron. I love you, Ron. He's a soulmate of mine. Him and his gal Tracy, and she's a sweetheart too. But they had come there, and we got a phone call. We didn't have TV, and it was really eerie because there was no traffic. We went up in the Sedona, up in the canyon, and came back down. It was really eerily quiet. They had No planes were flying over because this is one of the main arteries.
Right.
So that was noticeable. And we went to a restaurant, and it was a bar restaurant thing. They had TV on, and we were at the booth, and sure enough, man, here's this plane.
How did you find out that the planes hit?
Phone call in the morning.
Interesting.
Yeah, one of my peoples called me up and said, "You'll never guess what happened. These planes landed and crashed in the World Trade Center and the Pentagon and blah blah blah." And I go, "Really? Oh, okay. All right." I didn't think of anything other than, wow, that's a drag.
Because you already said it was going to happen.
Yeah, it takes a lot to shock me, man. Even when the virus came out, it's like, oh yeah, here we go, right on schedule. And that's the thing about, God, I hate the word because it's been misused, but you do get a prophetic. That's what they call it. That's what it is. An unction, a knowing, a word from the God, validated by Scripture. So I've learned to trust that after all these years. So yeah, I came at him from the Scriptures. I laid it out where before the foundations of the world, the Lamb was slain. I said God knew the flood was going to happen. He knew about the rebellion before it could happen. And just the sovereignty of God is all through the Scriptures. So instead of having a reasonable conversation, they got really heated. They basically attacked me as a person, said I was psychologically disturbed, which I thought took a lot of balls, considering his PhDs and stuff he didn't have. And by the time I left the meeting, I used the phone, and I called my wife, and she goes, "What happened?" And I'm sitting there, I go, "Linda, I think we're in the Antichrist." And I felt really, and we were in a kinship, and nobody from the kinship came over and checked on me. It was like, because he used to say stuff about people in the congregation. He'd get up and announce, "Oh, so-and-so's in sin, and they're rebelling, and they're doing this." So I imagine he had this great little speech about being nervous breakdown or whatever he used. But anyways, so that was hurtful that none of my peoples from the kinship group checked on me. And then I just started doing street ministry. I went back to doing what I was doing. Whoever would come in, we'd nurse them back to somewhat sobriety or health or whatever. And
you're at what age at this point?
This is after 9/11. This is...
Okay.
I spent probably 20 years just doing personal one-on-one type ministry, not really joining the church or getting involved with it, because I'd come to the conclusion that they are controlled to an extent by a government tax exempt status. And you guys know what that is. So I was looking for something a little more genuine and a little more real, and that seemed to be happening in the streets. And so I did that. And then I met my son. He moved in. We were taking care of Linda's mom. I took care of Linda's mom.
You met your son after a period of time?
Yeah.
Haven't been with him?
Yeah.
How old was he?
He was, God, in his 25 maybe when I first met him.
In touch with him today, Dean?
Oh, yeah.
Good relationship?
I've tattooed him. We've drank together. We've cried together. We're great. Tell
me how Dean is a good guy in your own movie.
God made me a good guy. I don't deserve none of this stuff. And he gave me a heartbeat. It's kind of like the Wizard of Oz. I got a heart. I got a brain. I got some courage. And I found a home. It's just not here. Soon.
There you go.
But yeah, everything I am is because Jesus redeemed me out of that quagmire of chaos, and by trusting Him, not doing it perfect, but doing it, and being honest with Him, and being close to Him, He's done this. Yep. I was asked to take a pulse on America. Okay. And I get fear. I get which usually results because men don't like to feel fear. They like to get pissed off. They're more comfortable being pissed off than afraid. So we'll just start with the root cause. We're afraid. We're afraid of the unknown, economic insecurity, somebody with a cold standing next to us, fear, fear, fear. It's pumped at us through the TV and the media all the time. We're born in fear. We got fear of death, which comes naturally with a belly button because we don't know what's on the other side. Or at least a lot of people don't know what's on the other side. I'm almost certain of what's on the other side, so I don't have that fear. And a sense of betrayal by other people that don't have their best interest out for them. Decisions are being made by soulless people that are affecting everyone.
What would you tell our government if you could sit down with our government today? What would you tell them?
After a Holy Ghost enema? Wow. Quit getting us in debt. That seems to be a real issue. Wow. Which branch? I mean, who's in charge here? You think the president's in charge? No, he's not in charge.
I think there's maybe somebody behind that curtain.
Oh yeah, they're probably in Europe or someplace like that.
That's an interesting take. If you could sit down with anybody other than Jesus Christ,
That'll happen.
and have lunch, who would it be?
Who would it be?
Past or present?
Who would it be? I think me and Jim Morrison would have got along.
There you go.
I can read between the lines in his songs.
That would be an interesting lunch, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be.
Or a beer, or in the past.
We'd probably break our sobriety for Jim. But I suppose it would have to be Jim Morrison until somebody comes along that impresses me as somebody being halfway decent, human being type thing. I mean, I'd have lunch with you after we get done here, but I have a limited time here myself. So
Do you want to expand on that?
I have one of them doctor visits, there was probably about 20 minutes long. I had a real bad lung infection because they were tearing the roof off of the apartment complexes here, and I breathed a bunch of the glass and dust and everything, and so I was coughing up blood, like in the movies you cough, oh shit, So I went and got that checked out, and she gave me some high dollar antibiotics, and we went for a follow-up MRI, and I guess they went a little too far south on me, and they picked up a tumor, and that became a thing. So we went and had another one done. This time it was a little different. They stuck dye and stuff inside me. Metal. I found out it was metal. And I was stuck in this giant magnet. I'd seen it on TV maybe, but I'd never experienced it myself. And I was having a blast with all this stuff. I got a quirky sense of humor, and I like to leave people smiling. So, yeah. So, anyways, the mass, the tumor, turned out to be cancer, and in the beginning when I got the diagnosis, oh yeah, let's go get this thing out. Let's do the thing, And my wife, the way she took it, that bothered me more than the diagnosis. And after being rejected by several main hospitals and a specialist, and then we had to go get it re-MRI'd, and it was spreading. It was spreading into the veins and the arteries all in here. And it's really strange because I've seen the inside of other people's bodies in TV shows and stuff like that. But when it's your own, it's like, oh my God. So yeah, it was a real revelation that I had a serious termite problem. And
termites.
Yeah, that's what I call it.
That's an interesting thing.
Yeah. So right away, everybody's like hitting me up with all these remedies and all this. And I did some studying like I would any new subject I was getting involved with, and so much for being told I was stupid. But anyways, I come to find out there's actual cures for cancer, and anytime someone had uh, a cure in the United States, the big pharma company came along and either the person mysteriously died or the records something happened where they weren't allowed to practice medicine in the United States with their success rate of actually curing certain cancers. And Australia seems to have had cures. England seems to have cured, which is interesting. So, so I'm just doing everything everybody's telling me to do because they're going to ask me, "Are you doing this? Are you doing that?" And I got to look them in the eye and say, "Yeah, I'm doing it." So I don't know if it's going to help. I'm trusting my faith to the Lord. I mean, I every day's borrowed time for me, anyways. You know, I've been ready to go home for 30 years ever since I found out I had a place to go, and I actually has wanted and belong there. It's just not. It just happens not to be on this side of the heartbeat. So I'm not overly anxious to go, but I'm not hesitant about it either. You know. And my wife is backing my play. She's supporting me. Um, Sometimes she goes through that little emotional thing where she's kind of mad. She's usually a real strong woman, but yeah, watching her like that was bothersome. So yeah, we put the feelers out there. I was rejected by the main hospitals and down in Phoenix and a cancer center that just deals with this kind of problem. And even the specialists didn't want to mess with it. And whether it was insurance or something, it was complicated. So we just kind of sat back and said, you know what? Instead of you sitting in a cot or a bed or walking around wishing you were dead or something, why don't we just live? So, which gave me permission to, you know, have a bucket list, you know, just little things and do the natural stuff that people are suggesting. And I went on the YouTube thing and found out they actually have cancers and cures, and I brought that up to my doctor, and it's like, yeah, well, big pharma, they make lots of money out of research and messing with people and strain them out. Granted, they may do some good work, but for the overall, it's just a long, drawn out process. And everybody agrees that my character wouldn't be one to mope around and slowly wish I was dead. So we decided that we were just going to live life and whatever happened, happened. And basically, I had done that my whole life. I mean, I was playing Russian roulette from when I was born, with a cord wrapped around my neck, surviving my parents, juvenile hall, the whole car wrecks, knife fights, gunfights, the whole thing. So um, I know where I'm going. I'm confident in my Lord and Savior to get me home, and knowing that He was in control of me even when I didn't know Him was really awesome. So in a way, since I wasn't supposed to know about it, and I know about it, I'm just going to live with it and be as positive as I can. And you know, somebody said, "Well, we can't tell you're a Christian," you know, and it's like, well, maybe you can't tell by the way I live, but maybe by the way I die, might help some people. So yeah, I'm going to face this. I'm going to walk through it and sprinkle hope to wherever I can, you know, and and do the natural stuff until we find a doctor that's willing to, you know, do these cures that they do have on the books. But like I said, because of big pharma, a lot of that natural and entomology, I don't know the names, but yeah. So I'm still talking to my doctor, um, you know, but for my personality, just walking through the valley, it's not even a shadow anymore. It's death. And I asked him straight up because we've had this dialogue. How would you feel about passing away during anesthesia? Because that was a concern. And I'll be good with that. And he goes, really? And I said, yeah. And so he's not afraid to talk to me about end of life matters. And I think he finds me somebody comfortable to be with. And I can tell he cares. He's a good guy. So I'll work with him until it's like pointless, and then just do the movie and final cut, print, going home. You know, time is an illusion at best for me, especially the way my life's been, you know. So, yeah, one day at a time, make the best out of it, do as much good, not because I need to do that to go to heaven, but because people need kindness and encouragement. And once you realize that, especially with all the eyes upon me, that I have to encourage every person is important that comes over, and yeah, you know, let's look for some laughter and some positive stuff, even in the midst of chaos, you know. And I think these are trying times. I think a lot of people's faith is going to be tested, and so my crew, my guys, and the people around me, they encourage me, you know, and I try and give that back to them.